Welcome to Inside the Philippines. I'm your host, and today we've got a story that's going to stick with you. This one's about Neil, a 71-year-old Irishman from County Cork, who spent nearly 5 decades delivering mail in the same town, walking the same streets, living the same quiet life. After retirement, facing down his golden years alone in a cold bedsit, he made a decision that seemed like his last shot at happiness. He thought he'd found something real, something worth leaving everything behind for. He had no idea what was waiting for him. Here's Niall's story, in his own words. Right, so, where do I even start with this? I suppose I should begin back in Cork. That's where I'm from, where I spent my whole life, really. 47 years I walked the same postal routes through the city, knew every street, every house, every dog that'd bark at me through the gates. Started in 1977, fresh out of school, and just never left. Same job, same bedsit on O'Connell Street, same routine day after day after day. People ask me sometimes, why didn't you ever marry, Niall? And the answer's simple enough, though it still stings to say it out loud. Her name was Siobhan O'Malley. We were 23, the both of us, and I was mad about her. Thought she felt the same. Then, one Saturday, in June 1978, she married my best mate, Declan. Just like that. I showed up to the church like an Egypt, because I was invited, wasn't I? Stood there watching her walk down the aisle in her white dress, and something in me just broke. I never got over it. Not properly. Oh, I went on dates here and there over the years, met a few nice women at the pub or through friends, but it never went anywhere. I'd compare them all to Siobhan, to what I thought we could have had, and they'd all fall short. So I just stopped trying after a while, became that bachelor everyone felt sorry for. You know the type, shows up to the pub alone, nurses his Guinness, goes home to an empty flat. My mom died in 2019. She was the last person who really needed me around, who I'd visit every Sunday for dinner. After she passed, it was just me, completely alone. My sister Mary lives up in Dublin with her family, but we're not close. She's got her own life. The lads I used to drink with at the pub, most of them died or moved away, or just drifted off. By the time I retired in 2022, I had nobody. The bedsit felt like a tomb. Same 4 walls I'd stared at for decades. Same narrow bed. Same little kitchen. Same view of the street outside where the rain never stopped falling. My pension was $900 a month. Enough to get by in Ireland, just about, but not enough to do anything with. I had $15,000 in savings from a lifetime of living careful, never spending on anything I didn't absolutely need. That was it. That was what I had to show for 71 years on this earth. The arthritis in my hands was getting worse. The Irish weather made it worse, all that damp cold seeping into my bones. I'd sit in my chair of an evening, scrolling through YouTube on my phone, because there was nothing else to do, and that's when the algorithm started feeding me these videos. Expat channels. Western men living in Thailand, Vietnam, the Philippines. Sunny beaches, cold beers, smiling women, cheap cost of living. Retire in paradise for $1,000 a month, the titles would say. The Philippines kept coming up. English-speaking, they said. Catholic country, like Ireland. Warm weather year-round, friendly people. And the cost of living? Jesus. They made it sound like you could live like a king on a postal pension. I told myself it was about the weather, about my arthritis, about stretching my savings further. But if I'm honest now, I was running. Running from the loneliness, from dying alone in that bedsit with nobody to find me for days. I wanted to feel something again. Wanted to matter to someone. Wanted to believe there was still time for me to have what I'd missed out on all those years ago. So one night in late November 2022, sitting in my chair with the rain hammering against the window, I joined Filipino Cupid. Just to look, I told myself, just to see what was out there. I was 71 years old, for God's sake. What woman would be interested in an old postman from Cork with arthritic hands and $15,000 to his name? I set up a profile, put in a photo someone took of me at a family wedding a few years back, where I didn't look too terrible, wrote a bit about myself. Kept it simple. Said I was retired, liked reading and walking, was interested in maybe moving to the Philippines someday, hit submit, and figured that'd be the end of it. Within a week, I had a message. Her name was Maria, 52 years old, from a place called Dumaguete City. I had to look it up on the map. Down in the Visayas region, smaller city, not Manila. Her profile photo showed a pleasant-looking woman with gray streaks in her hair, a nice smile, standing in what looked like a simple house. She worked at a department store, she said, widowed, 2 grown daughters. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed scam or anything dodgy. Her first message was lovely, just friendly, curious. Asked me about Ireland, said she'd always wanted to visit. Asked what I did for work, what I liked to do. Normal questions. We started chatting every day. She'd message me good morning. I'd message her back. We'd talk about our days, nothing heavy. She seemed genuinely interested in my stories about delivering post, about Cork, about Ireland. Laughed at my jokes, asked follow-up questions, remembered things I'd told her. After a few weeks, we moved to WhatsApp, started doing video calls. That's when it felt real, you know? Seeing her face, hearing her voice, watching her move around her house, showing me things. She introduced me to her daughters over video, Grace and Joy, both lovely girls, polite, friendly. Showed me her mother, Nanay Luz, an old woman who waved at the camera and smiled. 3 months in, during a late-night call, it was morning for her, evening for me. Maria went quiet for a moment. Then she said, very softly, "I think I'm falling in love with you, Niall." I nearly dropped the phone. No woman had said those words to me in 45 years, not since Siobhan, and she'd never said them quite like that. I didn't know what to say. My throat went tight. I think I just said, "I'm falling for you too, Maria." And I was. I genuinely was. Looking back now, I can see where it all started to go wrong. But in that moment, sitting in my bedsit in Cork, with this woman on the screen telling me she loved me, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. I felt hope. That first message from Maria came on a Tuesday evening. I remember because Tuesdays were always the worst. Nothing on the telly, no one at the pub, just me and the 4 walls. Her message was simple enough. "Hello, Niall. I saw your profile and wanted to say hello. You seem like a kind person. I hope you don't mind me writing to you." I didn't mind at all. We started chatting every day after that, just friendly stuff at first. She'd ask about my day. I'd tell her about walking down to the shops or what I'd had for tea. She told me about working at the department store in Dumaguete, dealing with customers, the heat. She had this way of making ordinary things sound interesting, you know? Like she genuinely wanted to know what I thought about things. After about 2 weeks, we exchanged phone numbers and moved to WhatsApp. That's when the photos started coming. Nothing dodgy, mind you. Just pictures of her day. The view from her window. A sunset over the sea. A plate of food she'd cooked. Normal things. I'd send her photos back, mostly just Cork in the rain, which must have looked miserable compared to her sunny skies. 3 weeks in, she suggested a video call. I was nervous as anything. What if I looked worse in person? What if I froze up and couldn't talk? But I said yes anyway, and that evening we connected on WhatsApp video. Seeing her face moving, hearing her voice in real time, it made everything feel different, more real. She was in her house, sitting in what looked like a simple living room with concrete walls painted white. Behind her I could see a small sofa, a fan spinning on the ceiling. She smiled when she saw me, and Christ, it was a lovely smile. We talked for nearly 2 hours that first call. She showed me around her house, introduced me to her daughters over video. Grace was the older one, 28, studying to finish her degree at the local university. Joy was 24, helping Maria at home. Both seemed like sweet girls, polite, a bit shy. Then there was Nanay Luz, Maria's mother, an old woman with gray hair who waved at the camera and said, "Hello, hello," in a cheerful voice. The video calls became regular after that, 3, 4 times a week, sometimes just 20 minutes, sometimes hours. I'd stay up late. It was morning for her when it was evening for me, and we'd talk about everything and nothing. She asked about Ireland, about my work as a postman, about Siobhan. I told her things I hadn't told anyone in years, about how it felt to watch the woman you love marry someone else, about the loneliness, about feeling like life had passed me by. She listened, really listened. And she shared things too, about her late husband who died of a heart attack 5 years ago, about struggling to support her daughters on her department store wages, about feeling invisible as a middle-aged woman in the Philippines. We bonded over that, I suppose. 2 lonely people who felt like the world had forgotten about them. 3 months in, during one of our late-night calls, Maria went quiet for a moment. Then she looked right at the camera and said, very softly, "I think I'm falling in love with you, Niall." I couldn't speak. My throat went tight. No woman had said those words to me since Siobhan, and even then, she'd never said them quite like that. I sat there in my bedsit in Cork, staring at this woman on my phone screen 8,000 kilometers away, and I felt something crack open in my chest. "I'm falling for you too, Maria," I managed to say, and I meant it. Looking back now, I should have been more careful. I should have asked more questions. But when you've been alone for as long as I had, when someone finally tells you they love you, you don't want to question it. You just want to believe. A month after that, Maria mentioned her mother was ill. Nothing serious, she said, just needed medication for her blood pressure, and the doctor's visit was expensive. The total came to about 8,000 pesos. I did the conversion, roughly €150. I sent it via Western Union without even thinking twice. It felt wrong not to help someone I cared about, didn't it? She was so grateful. Sent me a photo of Nanay Luz with the medication, thanked me over and over, said she hated asking, but had no one else to turn to. I told her not to worry about it. €150 was nothing. I'd spent more than that on pints over the years. 2 weeks later, Grace's college tuition was due. 15,000 pesos, about €250. Maria apologized for even mentioning it, said she felt terrible asking, but she was short and didn't know what to do. I sent it. Grace was nearly finished with her degree, and what kind of man would I be if I let her education suffer over a few €100? Then came the roof. The monsoon season hit Dumaguete hard that year, Maria said, and her roof was leaking badly. Water coming in, damaging things. She sent me photos, puddles on the floor, water stains on the ceiling. The repair would cost 18,000 pesos, €300. I hesitated on that one, not because I didn't believe her, the photos were right there, but because it was adding up, wasn't it? 4 requests in 2 months. Nearly €700 total. But then I thought, what's €700 compared to what I'd spend if I was dating someone in Ireland? Dinners out, cinema tickets, drinks, petrol. This was nothing. And besides, I loved her. You help the people you love. By December 2022, we'd been talking for nearly 9 months. Every day, multiple times a day. Good morning messages, photos throughout the day, video calls at night. She was part of my routine now, part of my life. The bedsit didn't feel quite as empty when I knew I'd be talking to Maria later. I'd sent her money a few more times for various things. An electric bill, something for Joy. I can't even remember all of it now. In total, I'd sent close to €2,000 over those 9 months. It sounds like a lot when I say it like that, but spread out over 9 months, it didn't feel like much. A couple hundred here, a couple hundred there. Nothing I couldn't afford. One night in late January 2023, after a particularly long video call where we'd talked about our future together, I made a decision. I went online and booked a flight to Dumaguete. One way, leaving Cork on February 15th. When I told Maria, she cried. Actual tears on the video call. "I can't wait to hold you, my love," she said. "I can't believe you're really coming. We're going to be so happy together." I believed her. God help me, I believed every word. The next few weeks were a blur of preparation. I gave notice on my bedsit, told my landlord I was moving to the Philippines for good. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind, but I didn't care. I sorted through my belongings, sold or gave away most of it. What did I need with 47 years of accumulated junk? I was starting fresh. My sister Mary called when she heard. "Niall, are you sure about this? You've never even met this woman in person. And you're giving up your flat? What if it doesn't work out?" "It'll work out," I told her. "I love her, Mary, and she loves me." "But Niall, I've made up my mind." She sighed. "Just be careful, yeah? Keep some money aside. Don't put everything into this until you're sure." I promised I would, but I wasn't really listening. I was too excited, too full of hope. The night before my flight, I sat in the empty bedsit, everything packed, everything sorted. I looked around at the 4 walls that had been my entire world for decades. The narrow bed, the tiny kitchen, the window that looked out onto the rainy Cork Street. I didn't feel sad about leaving. I felt free. Tomorrow I was flying to the Philippines. Tomorrow I was starting my new life with Maria. Tomorrow everything was going to be different. I had no idea how right I was about that last part. The flight from Dublin to Manila took forever. 2 connections, 30-odd hours of airports and cramped seats. I barely slept. Too nervous. Too excited. When we finally touched down at Manila's Ninoy Aquino Airport, the heat hit me like a wall the second I stepped off the plane. Even inside the terminal, it was warm and humid, nothing like Ireland. I was sweating through my shirt before I'd even collected my bags. I had a 4-hour layover before the domestic flight to Dumaguete. Sat in the Manila airport, watching Filipino families rushing about, hearing Tagalog all around me, smelling food I didn't recognize from the restaurants. It felt surreal. What was I doing here? A 71-year-old postman from Cork, sitting in an airport on the other side of the world, about to meet a woman I'd only ever seen on a phone screen. But then I'd think of Maria's face, her voice, the way she'd cried when I told her I was coming, and the nerves would settle. This was right. This was what I was meant to do. The domestic flight to Dumaguete Sibulan Airport was short, maybe an hour. Small plane, mostly locals. When we landed, I grabbed my 2 suitcases, everything I owned in the world now, and walked out into the arrival area. And there she was, Maria, standing with what looked like half of Dumaguete behind her. Her daughters, Grace and Joy, Nanay Luz in a wheelchair, and maybe a dozen other people I didn't recognize. Sisters, cousins, neighbors, I'd learn later. They were holding a banner that said, "Welcome Tatay Nayal," with little hearts drawn on it. The moment Maria saw me, she rushed forward. We hugged, properly hugged, for the first time. She felt real in my arms, solid, warm. She smelled like flowers and sweat and something sweet I couldn't place. "You're here," she kept saying. "You're really here." Everyone descended on me then, draping a garland of sampaguita flowers around my neck, taking selfies with me, their arms around my shoulders like we were old friends, calling me Tatay Neil, Tatay meaning father in Tagalog. I was overwhelmed, exhausted from the flight, sweating buckets in the heat. But I was smiling. They were treating me like I mattered, like I was someone important. We loaded into 2 tricycles, those little motorcycle sidecars they use for transport here. My suitcases barely fit. The drive to Maria's house in Bacong took about 20 minutes, weaving through traffic, jeepneys honking, the smell of diesel and grilled meat from street vendors. Everything was loud and colorful and chaotic, in a way Cork never was. Maria's house was modest. 2-bedroom, concrete block construction painted pale yellow, metal roof, small yard with a mango tree. But it was clean, tidy, exactly like I'd seen on video calls. They brought me inside, sat me down on the sofa, immediately started bringing me food. Lechon, roast pig, lumpia, rice, things I didn't have names for, cold San Miguel beer. So much food. That first week was a blur. I was jet-lagged, disoriented, but happy. Maria was attentive, affectionate. We'd sleep in her room, her bed, and she'd curl up next to me at night. During the day, there were constant visitors, family members I hadn't met yet, neighbors stopping by to meet the Kano, the foreigner. Everyone wanted to take photos, practice their English, ask me about Ireland. On Sunday, Maria took me to church. The whole family went. It was a big Catholic church in Bacong, packed with people in their Sunday best. Everyone stared at me, the white-haired foreigner sitting with Maria's family. The Mass was in Tagalog and English mixed together, and I barely understood any of it. But I stood when they stood, sat when they sat, tried to follow along. Afterwards, people came up to meet me, shook my hand, called me blessed, said Maria was lucky to have found such a good man. I felt like I was on display, but in a good way, you know? Like I finally belonged somewhere. The financial requests started almost immediately, but they felt reasonable at first. Day 3, Nanay Luz needed her blood pressure medication refilled. 5,000 pesos, about €80. Maria apologized for asking, said normally she'd handle it, but money was tight this month. I gave her the cash without hesitation. It was her mother, for Christ's sake. A few days later, Grace needed money for her graduation regalia, the gown and cap for her university ceremony coming up in April. 8,000 pesos, about €130. "She's worked so hard, Niall," Maria said. "This is such an important moment for her." Of course I paid. I wanted to help. Then the water pump broke. 12,000 pesos to repair, about €200. The plumber came, showed me the broken parts, explained it all in English. I watched him work, handed over the cash when he finished. Each request came with apologies, with gratitude, with explanations that made sense. And each time, I noticed something. I was the only one paying. Maria's sisters would visit, but they never contributed. Her neighbors would come for meals, but never brought money for food. It was all coming from me. One evening, about 2 weeks in, I mentioned it to Maria. Gently, mind you. I said, "Love, I'm happy to help, but it seems like I'm covering everything. Don't your family pitch in?" She looked at me like I'd said something odd. Then she sat down next to me and took my hand. "Neil," she said softly, "in the Philippines, the man provides. That's our culture. When my husband was alive, I took care of him, cooked for him, cleaned, made sure he was happy. Now you take care of us. You provide. That's how it works here. But what about your sisters? Or they have their own families to support. We don't ask each other for money. That would be shameful. But you're my partner now. In Filipino culture, we take care of family together. It's not like in your cold Ireland where everyone lives separate. Here, family is everything. We help each other. And now, you're part of this family." The way she said it made sense. Or at least, I wanted it to make sense. I'd read about Filipino family culture online, about how close-knit they were, how supporting your family was expected. Maybe this was just how it worked here. Maybe I was being selfish, thinking like an Irishman when I needed to think like a Filipino. "All right," I said. "I understand." She kissed my cheek. "You're a good man, Niall. God brought you to us for a reason." 3 weeks after I arrived, Maria brought up marriage. We were lying in bed one night, the fan spinning overhead, the sound of karaoke bleeding from a neighbor's house down the street. She rolled over to face me. "Niall, I've been thinking. We should get married." I wasn't entirely surprised. We'd talked about it vaguely online, about a future together, but the directness caught me off guard. "I want to marry you too," I said. "But there's no rush, is there? We've only just—" "For your visa, love. You're on a tourist visa now. You can extend it, but it's complicated. If we're married, you can get the 13A visa, the marriage visa. You can stay here permanently, legally. No more worrying about extensions or leaving every few months." She had a point. I'd looked into the visa situation before coming, and the tourist visa was a hassle. Expensive to keep extending. The 13A marriage visa made sense if I was planning to stay long-term, which I was. "And," Maria continued, "for respectability, for the community. We're living together now as man and wife, but we're not married in the eyes of God or the law. People talk, Niall. My family is Catholic. This isn't right unless we're properly married." I thought about it. I was 71 years old. What was I waiting for? I'd already given up my bedsit, my life in Ireland. I was here now. This was my future. "All right," I said. "Let's do it." Her face lit up. "Really? Really? Let's get married." She kissed me, hard, then started talking excitedly about plans. "April," she said. "We'd get married in April, just 2 months away. The church in Bacon, a proper Catholic ceremony. A reception for the family and the barangay. Over the next few days, the costs started adding up. Maria needed a wedding dress, 20,000 pesos, about €320. The church fee, the reception venue, the food for the guests. It kept growing. I'd sit there with her and Nanay Luz and the daughters, and they'd list off expenses, and I'd nod along, my head spinning. Finally, Maria tallied it all up. The wedding would cost 480,000 pesos. I did the conversion in my head. €8,000. Nearly €8,000. "That's quite a lot," I said carefully. "It's a big wedding, Niall. My whole family will be there. The entire barangay. This is important. This is how we do things here." She looked at me with those eyes. "Unless you don't want to marry me?" No, I do. Of course I do." "Then this is what it costs. In the Philippines, the man pays for the wedding. It's tradition. I went to my room, technically the spare room where I kept my suitcases, and sat on the bed with my phone, looking at my bank account. I had 13,000 euro left in savings after spending 2,000 online before I came. 8,000 for the wedding would leave me with 5,000. 5,000 euro, and my 900 euro monthly pension. It felt like a lot to spend. But then again, this was my wedding. Our wedding. You only get married once. Or in my case, for the first time at 71. I transferred 8,000 euro, converted it to pesos at a money changer in Dumaguete the next day. 480,000 pesos in cash handed over to Maria. She counted it carefully, then hugged me tight. You won't regret this, Niall. We're going to be so happy together. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But standing there in that house in Baking, the heat pressing down, the constant stream of relatives coming and going, the money flowing out faster than I'd ever spent in my life, a small voice in the back of my head whispered a question I didn't want to hear. What am I doing? I pushed it away. This was love. This was family. This was my new life. I was 71, and what was I waiting for? The wedding was massive. I'm talking 200 people, maybe more. Practically the entire barangay turned up. The church in Bacon was packed, sweltering hot even with all the windows open. I wore a barong Tagalog, that traditional Filipino shirt made of pineapple fiber, white and translucent. Maria had insisted I get one made specially. Another expense, but what could I do? I stood at the altar sweating through the barong, watching Maria walk down the aisle in her white dress. The ceremony was in a mix of English and Tagalog, the priest droning on about God's plan and the sanctity of marriage. I barely understood half of it. Maria's relatives filled the pews, all watching me, this white-haired Kano marrying into their family. I felt like I was in a dream. The reception afterwards was at a local hall. Enormous pans of pancit, mountains of rice, roasted lechon pig on a spit, San Miguel beer flowing like water, a band playing loud Filipino music, karaoke starting up before the food was even finished. Everyone wanted to shake my hand, congratulate me, call me blessed. You're so generous, Tatay Niall, they kept saying. Maria is so lucky. God has blessed you both. I smiled and nodded and accepted their congratulations, but the whole time I was thinking about the money. 480,000 pesos. 8,000 euro. Gone. For one day. One party for people I barely knew. But Maria was happy. Radiant, even. She kept squeezing my hand, introducing me to distant cousins and old friends. This was what she wanted. This was what mattered here. I told myself it was worth it. After the wedding, the 13A visa application process started. More money, fees for this, fees for that. A lawyer to handle the paperwork. Maria's cousin knew someone who could expedite things. I handed over cash, signed forms I barely read, trusted that Maria and her family knew what they were doing. By May 2023, my Irish bedsit lease had expired. My landlord back in Cork had found a new tenant. There was no going back now. I was committed. Legally married, visa application in process, living full-time in Maria's house in Bacong. That's when the real obligations started. First it was Nanay Luz. She needed cataract surgery. Both eyes. The doctor explained it all to me at a hospital in Dumaguete. Showed me the cloudy lenses, said her vision was deteriorating, said she needed the operation soon. The cost was 180,000 pesos. I did the math. 3,000 euro. That's a lot of money, I said to Maria that night. She's my mother, Niall. She can barely see. Would you let your own mother go blind? My mother was dead, but I understood the point. What kind of man refuses medical care for his wife's mother? I transferred the money from my savings account, €3,000. Gone. Then Grace's final year of university tuition came due. 120,000 pesos. €2,000. Maria showed me the bill, the deadline. She's so close to finishing, Niall. Just one more year and she'll have her degree. She can get a good job, help support the family. This is an investment in our future. I paid it. Then the house needed a new roof. Properly this time, Maria said. Not just repairs, but a complete replacement. The metal sheeting was old, rusting, leaking in multiple places. We needed galvanized iron, proper installation. 150,000 pesos, €2,500. I hesitated on that one. We just fixed the roof before I came. I sent you money for repairs. That was just temporary, love. Patching. This is the real fix. You can't expect us to live with a leaking roof forever. I looked up at the ceiling, saw the water stains, the rust marks. She wasn't wrong. But the money kept flowing out. Then Joy wanted to take a nursing course. 80,000 pesos. €1,350. Nursing is a good profession, Maria explained. She can work overseas, in Dubai or Singapore. OFWs, overseas Filipino workers, they send money home. This is how Filipino families improve their situation. You invest in education, they get good jobs abroad, everyone benefits. I was starting to see the pattern. Every investment was for the family's future. Every expense was necessary, urgent, important. And I was the one funding it all. My pension came in every month, €900, which converted to about 54,000 pesos. Sounds like a lot, doesn't it? But it evaporated within days. Food for the household, electricity bills, water bills, Maria's mother's medications, expenses for this, expenses for that. Family members would show up needing help. Maria's sister's husband lost his job. Could Tatay Neil lend them 30,000 pesos, about €500, just until he found work again? I started withdrawing from my savings. First €1,000, then 2,000, then 3,000. I'd check my bank balance on my phone and watch the number shrink. By August 2023, 6 months after arriving, I'd spent €11,000 of my original 15,000 in savings. €4,000 left. €4,000 between me and nothing. And Maria was getting cold. Not all at once. Gradually. I'd notice it when I hesitated on a request. When I suggested maybe we should slow down the spending, budget more carefully, she'd go quiet. Sleep on the couch instead of our bed. Make pointed comments at dinner about other Canos who truly love their wives. You see Roberto down the street? She'd say. He's American, married to Liza. He just bought them a new motorcycle. That's what a real husband does. Or, I talked to my friend Elena today. Her Cano husband sends money every month, no questions asked. He trusts her. He understands Filipino culture. The daughters would look at me with disappointment when I said I needed to think about an expense. Not anger, just quiet disappointment. Like I was letting them down. The religious guilt was constant. God sees everything, Niall. He knows who is generous and who is selfish. In the Philippines, we believe in taking care of family. It's not like your cold Ireland where you put your parents in homes and forget about them. Here, we honor our obligations. I'd lie awake at night, the fan spinning overhead, listening to karaoke from 3 houses away, Maria asleep on the couch in the other room, and I'd wonder, was I being unreasonable? Was this genuinely how Filipino families worked? Or was I being taken advantage of? I couldn't tell any more. The line between cultural expectations and exploitation had blurred completely. Every time I visited Dumaguete City, I'd see other foreign men with their Filipino wives. At the malls, at restaurants, walking along the boulevard. Some looked happy, settled, content. Others looked like me, tired, worn down, walking ATMs in human form. I'd wonder which ones were in genuine relationships and which ones were trapped like I was starting to feel. I tried talking to a few expats at a coffee shop near Silliman University one afternoon. Older guys, Americans and Australians mostly, married to local women. I asked carefully, obliquely, about family obligations and expenses. One American guy, maybe 65, laughed. "Brother, you're learning the hard way. Filipino family culture is real, but you gotta set boundaries early. I support my wife's mother, help with school fees for the nieces, but I made it clear from day one. I'm not a bank. You let them think you're unlimited funds, they'll drain you dry." "How do you say no?" I asked. "You just do. Firmly, but kindly. I'd love to help, but that's not in the budget this month. And you stick to it. They'll test you, guilt you, but if the relationship is real, they'll respect boundaries eventually." I thought about that conversation on the tricycle ride home. Could I set boundaries with Maria? Would she accept them? Or would she just pull further away, make me feel more like an outsider in a house I was paying for? By August, my savings were down to €4,000. My monthly pension barely covered household expenses, and the requests kept coming. Always urgent, always necessary, always framed as family obligation or cultural expectation or God's will. I started to feel like I was drowning. Slowly, incrementally, but definitely drowning. And I had nowhere to go. No bedsit back in Cork. No savings to rebuild with. Legally married to Maria. My visa status tied to her. 71 years old in a country 8,000 kilometers from home. One night in late August, I sat in the dark living room after everyone had gone to bed. The house was quiet, except for the fan and the distant sound of dogs barking. I pulled out my phone and looked at my bank balance. €4,200. I'd spent over €10,000 in 6 months. €10,000 that had taken me decades to save. Gone in half a year. And the worst part? One still wasn't sure if I was being exploited or if I was just failing to understand Filipino culture. Maybe I really was selfish. Maybe this was genuinely how families operated here, and I was the problem, not them. That uncertainty was the cruelest part. Not knowing if I was a victim or just a foreigner who didn't get it. I put my phone away and sat in the dark, listening to the night sounds of baking, wondering how much longer I could keep this up before there was nothing left. By October 2023, 8 months after I'd arrived, I had €4,000 left in my bank account. 4,000 out of 15. The arthritis in my hands was worse, not better. Turns out the heat and humidity don't help like I thought they would. They make it worse. My joints ached constantly. I'd wake up in the morning with my fingers stiff, painful to bend. The tropical climate I'd dreamed about in Cork was just a different kind of misery. I had no friends. I'd tried connecting with other expats in Dumaguete, but most of them seemed to have unlimited money, or they were younger, in their 50s, still working remotely. The ones my age who were in similar situations to mine, they didn't want to talk about it. Too much shame, I suppose. And the locals were polite, but distant. I was Tatay Neil, Maria's husband, the walking wallet. That's all I was to them. Maria was cold now, unless she needed something. We hadn't shared a bed in weeks. She'd sleep on the couch or in the spare room with the excuse that I snored, that the heat bothered her, that she needed space. The affection from those first months was completely gone. When she did speak to me, it was about money. Always money. Grace and Joy were polite, but treated me like a lodger. I'd overhear them talking sometimes, switching to Vissian when I walked into a room. I didn't speak the language, but I could tell from their tone they were talking about me. Probably about how stingy I was being now that the money was running out. I spent my days walking around Dumaguete. Hours and hours of just walking. Along the boulevard by the sea, watching the jeepneys and tricycles go past, sitting on benches, going to cheap cafes, and nursing one cup of coffee for as long as I could. Anything to get out of that house where I felt like a ghost. One afternoon in mid-October, I was trying to call my sister Mary in Dublin. We hadn't spoken in a while, and I wanted to hear a familiar voice. But my phone died right as I was dialing. Battery completely dead. Maria was at the market. The house was empty except for me. I looked around for my charger, couldn't find it. Then I remembered. Maria's phone was on the kitchen counter. She'd left it behind when she went out. I picked it up, thinking I'd just use it quickly to call Mary, then put it back before Maria returned. But, as I unlocked the screen, she didn't have a passcode, never did. A Facebook Messenger notification popped up. "Miss you, my love," with a heart emoji. From someone named Robert. My stomach dropped. I should have put the phone down right then. Should have respected her privacy. But I couldn't. My hands were shaking as I opened Messenger. There were 4 active conversations. Robert, Hans, David, and me. Robert was Australian, 68 years old from his profile picture. They'd been chatting for over a year. "Good morning, my darling. I can't wait to see you again. You make me so happy." The same phrases Maria had used with me. The exact same phrases. And the money requests. "My mother needs medication. P10,000. Robert had sent it. Last month. The same month I'd paid for Nane Luce's medication. Hans was German. 64. They'd been talking for 8 months. He called her mein Schatz, my treasure. He'd sent money for the roof repair in May. 20,000 pesos. The same roof I'd paid to fix with 150,000 pesos. David was American. 71, same age as me. From Florida. They'd been chatting for 6 months. Maria told him she was a widow living alone with her elderly mother. That she worked hard but struggled to make ends meet. That she'd never expected to find love again at her age. He was planning to visit in December. She'd told him she couldn't wait to finally meet him in person, to hold him, to start their life together. I sat down on the bed, Maria's phone in my trembling hands, and I read. I read everything, months and months of conversations. The pattern was identical with all of them. Sweet messages at first. "I think I'm falling in love with you." Then the requests, small at first, then bigger. Always apologetic, always grateful, always framed as emergencies. Robert sent 30,000 pesos monthly, regular as clockwork. He thought he was supporting his girlfriend and her family. Hans sent 25,000 pesos monthly. He thought he was helping the woman he loved. David sent money for emergencies. A few $100s here, a few hundred there. Building up to his December visit when he'd finally meet the love of his life in person. And me. I was just another one. Customer number 1, maybe, because I'd actually shown up. But I wasn't special. I wasn't different. I was just one of 4 lonely old men being worked at the same time. The messages to each of them were nearly identical. She'd copy and paste the same sweet nothings, just changing the name. Good morning, Robert, my love. Good morning, Hans, my treasure. Good morning, David, my heart. Good morning, Neil, my darling. I felt sick. Physically sick. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. All those months of video calls, all those I love yous, all those tears when I said I was coming to visit. It was all a script, a performance, a business transaction. I heard the front gate open. Maria was back from the market. I put her phone back on the kitchen counter exactly where I'd found it and went to the spare room. Sat on the bed. Stared at the wall. She called out, "I'm home," like nothing was wrong. Started putting away groceries. Humming to herself. I couldn't move. Couldn't think properly. Couldn't process what I'd just discovered. I'd given up everything for this. My home, my savings, my dignity. I'd married this woman. I was legally bound to her. And it was all a lie. Every single bit of it. The worst part, and 1,000 ashamed to admit this, the very worst part wasn't even the betrayal. It was realizing how stupid I'd been, how obvious it all was in retrospect. A 52-year-old Filipina widow falling in love with a 71-year-old Irish postman she'd never met. Of course it wasn't real. Of course it was about money. How had I been so blind? I sat there in that spare room for hours. Maria made dinner, called me to eat. I said I wasn't hungry. She didn't push it. Why would she? She had 3 other men sending her money. She didn't need me anymore. Not really. My pension was just supplementary income now. The sun set. The house got dark. The karaoke started up from the neighbors' houses, that constant soundtrack of Filipino provincial life. Dogs barking, tricycles passing, the fan spinning overhead. I pulled out my own phone, now charged, and looked at my bank balance again. 4,000 euro. That's what I had left. The flight back to Ireland would cost at least 600 euro, maybe more. But even if I could afford the flight, what was I going back to? No flat, no home. I'd have to start completely over at 71 years old with 3,400 euro to my name. And the 13A visa, the marriage visa. My legal status in the Philippines was tied to Maria. If I left her, if I tried to annul the marriage, which would cost 300,000 to 800,000 pesos, money I absolutely didn't have, I'd have to start the whole immigration process over from scratch. Or leave the country entirely. I was trapped. Legally, financially, practically. Trapped in a house in Bacon with a woman who'd never loved me. In a country 8,000 kilometers from home, with almost nothing left. The phone in my hand buzzed. A message from Mary in Dublin. Just checking in. Haven't heard from you in a while. Hope you're well. Miss you. I stared at the message for a long time. What could I possibly say? That I'd been a complete fool? That I'd wasted my retirement on a fantasy? That I was stuck in the Philippines with no way out? I typed back, "I'm grand. Just settling into life here. Talk soon," and put the phone down. The lie came easy. Easier than the truth. I sat in that dark room, listening to the sounds of baking at night, and for the first time since arriving in the Philippines, I let myself cry. Really cry. Not quiet tears, but proper sobbing. The kind that shakes your whole body. I cried for the life I'd given up, for the money I'd lost, for the loneliness that had brought me here in the first place, for being 71 years old and more alone than I'd ever been, even back in that bedsit in Cork. But mostly I cried because I knew, deep in my bones, that there was no way out. I was stuck here. And Maria knew it too. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in the spare room staring at the ceiling, listening to the fan whir, the dog's bark, the distant karaoke. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those messages. "Robert, Hans, David, me. All of us just names in a rotation. Morning came. Maria was up early, making breakfast like nothing had happened, because to her, nothing had. I was still just one of her income streams, the one who'd actually shown up. I waited until she sat down with her coffee. Then I walked out to the kitchen and stood there until she looked up at me. "We need to talk," I said. She set down her cup. "About what?" "I saw the messages. On your phone. Yesterday." I waited for her to deny it, to look shocked, to make some excuse. But she didn't. She just sat there, looking at me with this tired expression. "Which ones?" she finally asked. "Which ones?" Like there were so many she couldn't remember. "Robert, Hans, David." My voice was shaking. "You've been chatting with them the whole time, telling them you loved them, taking their money, the same money you were taking from me." Maria sighed. Actually sighed, like I was being unreasonable. "Niall, I paid for that roof repair, 150,000 pesos. And Hans sent you money for the same repair. Did you even fix the bloody roof, or was that all just, 'We fixed it'? With whose money? Mine or his?" She didn't answer. I felt something break inside me then. I'd been holding it together, trying to stay calm, but suddenly I couldn't. The tears came. Proper crying. The first time I'd cried since my mother's funeral. "I loved you," I said, and Christ, even saying it out loud made me feel like an Egypt. "I thought this was real. I thought you loved me too." Maria stood up and came over to me. For a second I thought she might hug me, try to comfort me, keep up the act. But she didn't. She just looked at me with those tired eyes. "Sit down, Niall." "I don't want to sit down. I want you to tell me the truth. Was any of it real? Any of it at all?" She sat back down herself, folded her hands on the table. When she spoke, her voice was flat, matter of fact. "You knew what this was, Niall. You knew a 52-year-old Filipina wasn't in love with a 71-year-old Irish postman she'd never met. You needed someone. I needed money. That's the arrangement." The words hit me like a punch, not because they were cruel, because they were true. Some part of me had known all along, hadn't I? I just hadn't wanted to admit it. "But you said, the video calls, you said you loved me." "I said what you needed to hear, what you wanted to hear. You were lonely. You wanted to believe someone could love you. So you did." I sat down then because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. "What about the others? Robert and Hans and David? Do they know about me?" She shook her head. "No, and they won't. Robert visited last year, stayed for 2 weeks. You think I told him about the others? David is coming in December. He'll stay. We'll have a nice time. He'll leave. None of you know about each other. How much are they sending you? Why does it matter? Tell me." She shrugged. "Robert sends 30,000 pesos a month. Every month, like clockwork. Hans sends 25,000. David sends money when I ask. Usually for emergencies." I did the math in my head. 30,000 plus 25,000. 55,000 pesos a month. Nearly 900 euro. Plus whatever David sent. Plus my pension. She was making more from us than most people in Dumaguete made from actual jobs. "This is what you do then? This is your business? This is survival, Niall? You think I want to do this? I have no pension, no savings, no husband to take care of me. My first husband died and left me with nothing but debts. I work at a department store making 15,000 pesos a month. That's barely enough to feed my mother, let alone support my daughters, pay for their education, fix the house when things break. This is Discarte, Filipino survival. Discarte? You mean scamming lonely old men? Her face hardened. You Canos come here with your pensions thinking you're rich. You want a Filipino wife, but you don't understand what that means. It means taking care of family. Always. It's not like your cold Ireland where you abandon your parents when they get old. Here, we have obligations. Real obligations. And you knew that. You knew supporting my family was part of this. One thought I was supporting your family because you were my wife. Not because I was one of 4 men paying for everything. What difference does it make? The money goes to the same place. The difference is, I thought you loved me. I was shouting now. I heard footsteps, Grace and Joy, woken by the noise, staying in their room but listening. Nanay Luz, in her room, probably awake too. Everyone hearing this. Maria's voice stayed calm, cold. I needed money. You needed companionship. That was the deal. I gave you what you wanted. You gave me what I needed. It's a transaction, Niall. That's all it ever was. I wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but I couldn't. Because standing there in that kitchen and baking, with the morning light coming through the windows and the smell of coffee in the air, and this woman I'd married looking at me like I was a particularly slow customer, I realized she was right. I had known. On some level, I'd always known. I'm leaving, I said. I'm going back to Ireland. She laughed. Actually laughed. Not cruel, just tired. Like she'd heard this before. With what money, Niall? I have €4,000 left. That's enough for a ticket. And then what? Where will you live? Your flat is rented to someone else. Do you have money for a deposit on a new place? First month's rent? How will you live while you wait for your first pension payment in the new account? I hadn't thought about that. Hadn't thought about any of it. And your visa, she continued. You're married to me. Your 13A visa is attached to our marriage. You leave me, you have to start the whole immigration process over. You'll have to leave the country, apply for a new tourist visa, hope they approve it. Or you can pay for annulment. Do you know how much that costs here? I knew. I'd looked it up weeks ago when things started getting bad. 300,000 to 800,000 pesos. 5,000 to 13,000 euro. Money I absolutely didn't have. The Philippines doesn't have divorce, Niall, only annulment. And it takes years, 2, 3, sometimes 5 years. You'd have to hire a lawyer, prove psychological incapacity, go through courts that move slower than anything you've seen in Ireland. Can you afford that? I couldn't. I couldn't afford any of it. Maria stood up, came over to me, put her hand on my shoulder. Not affectionate, just practical. You can stay here. I don't mind. You're not a bad man, Niall. You're just lonely. And now you're here. So stay. Keep giving me your pension share for expenses. 15,000 pesos a month seems fair for food and bills. The rest you can keep. Build your savings back up if you want. Live quietly. I won't bother you, and you don't bother me. Just like that? I just stay? While you keep chatting with Robert and Hans and David? Why not? You have nowhere else to go. They don't know about you. You don't know about them. Everyone gets what they need. It's practical. Practical. That's what my marriage had become. A practical arrangement in a house in Baking, where I was just another revenue stream. I looked at her standing there in her house dress, her hair up in a clip, no makeup, looking every bit the 52-year-old department store worker she was. Not beautiful, not special, just a woman trying to survive in a country where survival meant being clever, resourceful, ruthless when necessary. And I realized something. I wasn't angry at her. Not really. I was angry at myself. for being so desperate, so lonely, so pathetically eager to believe that someone could love me, that I'd ignored every warning sign, every red flag, every moment that should have told me to slow down, to question, to protect myself. She was right. I had known what this was. I'd just chosen not to see it. "What about David?" I asked quietly. "When he comes in December, what are you going to tell him? That you're my cousin's husband visiting from Ireland, or that you're a boarder renting the spare room? He'll believe whatever I tell him. They always do. And when Robert visits again? Same thing. Niall, they don't want to know the truth any more than you did. They want to believe they found love in the Philippines. They want to believe a Filipina woman loves them. So they believe it. It's easier than admitting they're just another lonely old man buying companionship." She went to the counter, poured herself more coffee, her back to me. "You can stay, or you can go," she said, without turning around. "But if you go, you're going with nothing. No wife, no home, no money. If you stay, at least you have a roof over your head, a place to sleep, someone to cook your meals. It's not love, but it's something." Grace and Joy came out of their room then, looked at me with those same tired eyes their mother had. They'd heard everything. They knew. They'd probably always known. I thought about my options. Really thought about them. Option 1, buy a ticket back to Ireland. Arrive with maybe €3,000 left. No flat, no job. Start over at 71. Option 2, stay here, in this house, with this woman who'd never loved me, paying 15,000 pesos a month to exist as furniture, watching her chat with other men on her phone, living out my days in a place I didn't belong, among people who saw me as nothing but a wallet. There was no option 3, no good choice, no way out that didn't involve losing everything. I was trapped. Truly, completely trapped. And the worst part? Maria was right. It was practical. It made sense. I had nowhere else to go. I looked at her there by the counter. She was watching me now, waiting for my answer. "I'll stay," I said. My voice sounded dead even to my own ears. "But I don't want to pretend anymore. No more acting like we're married. No more sharing anything. I pay my share. You leave me alone." She nodded. "That's fair." And that was it. That was how my marriage ended. Not with fighting or crying or drama. Just a practical agreement between two people who'd been using each other all along. I went to the spare room and closed the door. Sat on the bed. Looked around at this space that was now my prison. 71 years old. Broke. Legally tied to a woman who'd never loved me. Stuck in the Philippines with no way out. The karaoke started up from the neighbor's house. Same songs as always. Someone singing badly off-key. Dogs barking. Tricycles passing. Life in Bacon going on like nothing had happened. Because nothing had happened. Not really. The truth had just finally caught up with the lie. I lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. The fan spun overhead. The heat pressed down. And I thought about that bedsit in Cork. The one I'd been so eager to leave. The one that had felt like a tomb. At least, there, I'd only been lying to myself. So here I am. February 2024. 1 year to the day since I arrived in Dumaguete. 72 years old now. Still living in Maria's house in Bacon. Still stuck. The routine is simple. I wake up early, before everyone else. Make my own coffee. Eat whatever's in the kitchen. Then I leave. Walk to Dumaguete City, 4 kilometers each way. Sit in a cafe near Silliman University. Order 1 coffee. Nurse it for 2-3 hours. Watch the students rush past, the jeepneys honking, the tricycles weaving through traffic. Then I walk back before dark. Maria tolerates my presence. That's the best word for it. Tolerates. We don't speak much. I give her 15,000 pesos a month, about €240, for my share of food and electricity and water. She takes it without comment. The rest of my pension I keep. I've managed to save back up to €4,200. It's taken 4 months to add €200 to what I had left. At this rate, I'll die before I have enough to leave. The other men are still in the picture. Maria doesn't hide it anymore. I see her on her phone, chatting with Robert, with Hans, with David. Sometimes she takes video calls in the living room while I'm there. She'll speak to them in that sweet voice she used to use with me, then hang up and go back to scrolling Facebook like nothing happened. Robert visited in December. Maria told me to stay away for the week. Said she'd told him I was a cousin's husband visiting for work. I spent the week in a cheap guest house in Valencia, 20 kilometers away. Cost me 12,000 pesos, nearly €200, that I couldn't afford to spend. When I came back, Robert was gone. Maria acted like nothing had happened. Hans is scheduled to visit in March. 2 weeks from now. I'll have to disappear again. Another week, another guest house, another chunk of money I can't afford to lose. David sends money every month. He still thinks he's in an exclusive relationship with a Filipina widow who loves him. He's planning to visit in June. The cycle continues. They come, they leave, they never know about each other. And Maria keeps collecting. Grace graduated from university in May. Got a job at a hotel in Dumaguete. Makes 18,000 pesos a month. She doesn't contribute to the household. Why would she? Tatay Niall is here to cover that. Joy finished her nursing course. She's applying for jobs in Dubai, in Saudi Arabia. The OFW dream. If she gets one, she'll send money home to Maria. Add that to Robert's 30,000 monthly. Hans's 25,000 monthly. David's emergency contributions, and my 15,000. Maria's doing quite well for herself, actually. Nanay Luz is still here, still needs medication, still has medical issues. Maria still asks Robert and Hans and David for help with those costs, even though they were covered months ago. They still send the money. I've thought about contacting them, warning them, telling Robert and Hans and David the truth. But what would be the point? They wouldn't believe me. I'm just the bitter old man who got found out. And even if they did believe me, what then? They'd leave, same as I should have, same as I can't. I've looked into annulment, really looked into it. Talked to a lawyer in Dumaguete. The cost is minimum 300,000 pesos for a simple case, closer to 800,000 if there are complications. That's 5,000 to 13,000 euro. It takes 2 to 5 years to process. I'd need to prove psychological incapacity, that Maria was mentally unfit for marriage at the time we wed. Good luck proving that when we were both clear-headed and she was very much in control the entire time. And even if I could afford it, even if I went through with it, then what? My visa is tied to the marriage. I'd have to leave the country and reapply for a tourist visa, or get an SRRV retirement visa, which requires a deposit of $20,000, over 18,000 euro. Money I absolutely don't have. So, I'm stuck, legally stuck, financially stuck, practically stuck. My sister Mary calls sometimes, asks when I'm coming home. I tell her soon, maybe next year. Things are just complicated right now. She's stopped asking questions. I think she knows, or suspects, but we don't talk about it. Irish families are good at not talking about things. I see other expats around Dumaguete. Old men like me with Filipina partners. Some of them look happy, really happy. Maybe their relationships are genuine. Maybe they found real love here. I hope they did. I genuinely hope they did. Others look like me, that hollow look, that awareness that they're trapped. We don't talk to each other. Too much shame, too much recognition of our own mistakes reflected back. There's a young guy I see sometimes at the cafe. American, maybe 55. He's been here 2 months with his Filipina girlfriend. I watch him make the same mistakes I made. I watch her ask for money for her mother's medication, for her brother's tuition, for the house repair. I watch him pay, smiling, happy to help. I watch him fall into the same trap. I've thought about warning him, walking over, sitting down, telling him my story. But I don't. What's the point? He wouldn't listen. I wouldn't have listened either. When you're lonely and someone offers you love, you take it. You don't question it. You don't want to question it. The loneliness is worse here than it was in Cork. At least in Cork, I belonged there. I knew the language, the culture, the unspoken rules. Here, I'm an outsider, a walking wallet, a cano. That's all I'll ever be. I think about Siobhan sometimes, about that church in Cork in 1978, watching her marry Declan. I spent 45 years pining for her, 45 years stuck in the past, unable to move forward. And then I spent the last bit of my life chasing a fantasy 8,000 kilometers away. I wasted it all, the whole thing, my whole life, pining for a woman who never loved me, then falling for another woman who never loved me. 72 years on this earth, and I never learned the lesson. Loneliness makes you vulnerable, makes you see love where there's just business, makes you ignore red flags because the alternative is dying alone. And here's what I've learned, sitting in this cafe in Dumaguete, watching the world go by, knowing I can't leave. The transaction ends when you can't afford to keep paying, but your legal obligations don't. I'm stuck here, 72 years old, broke, alone in a country where I'm nothing but a walking ATM that ran out of money. I sit in this house I helped pay for among people who tolerate me only because I still contribute something. And I think about that bedsit in Cork, the one I was so desperate to escape. At least there, I was lying to myself in my own country. At least there, I could die in a place that knew my name. Here, I'm just another cautionary tale, another old fool who thought he could buy love in the Philippines. The only difference between Ireland and here is the weather's warmer when you're dying alone. That's my story. That's how I wasted my retirement. That's how I got stuck in the Philippines with no way out. If you're watching this and you're thinking about doing what I did, please, please don't. Or if you do, keep your money, keep your independence, keep your way out. Because once you're trapped, once you've spent everything and signed everything and legally bound yourself to someone who never loved you, there's no escape. I'll be here in Bacong until I die. In a house that's not mine, with a wife who was never mine, in a country that will never be mine. That's the price I paid for running from loneliness. Turns out I should have just stayed home. Niall's story is a cautionary tale about late-life loneliness and the dangers of confusing financial transactions with genuine relationships. The Philippines has real cultural expectations around family support, and poverty creates genuine desperation, but it's crucial to understand the difference between cultural obligation and calculated exploitation. For anyone considering retirement or relationships in the Philippines, here's what Niall's experience teaches us. First, verify everything and move slowly. Second, maintain financial independence no matter what. Keep savings separate and never spend more than you can afford to lose. Third, understand that genuine love doesn't come with a price tag attached to every family emergency. Fourth, know the legal reality. The Philippines has no divorce, only expensive annulment, and your visa status may trap you. And finally, remember that loneliness is painful, but making decisions from a place of desperation often leads to worse outcomes. Niall's mistake wasn't falling in love. It was being so desperate to escape his loneliness that he ignored every warning sign, rationalized every red flag, and gave away his power to leave. Now he pays for that mistake every single day. If you found this story valuable, please like and subscribe to Inside the Philippines. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts or your own experiences. These stories exist to help others avoid the same mistakes, to shine light on the realities that the Paradise Retirement videos don't show you. Until next time, stay safe out there. This is Inside the Philippines.